Lestat here, hope you guys are doing well. Today we're going to be profiling my vampire deck. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to give it a like, leave a comment down below, I always enjoy interacting with you, and please consider subscribing for more awesome Yu-Gi-Oh content. Without further ado, let's dive right into it. First we're playing triple copies of Vampire Ghost. This is going to be your primary starter. You could pitch a vampire card from your hand to add a level 5 or higher vampire monster from deck to hand, then send a level 2 or lower vampire monster from deck to grave. Ideally, you want to add Grace. That way you can send either Familiar or Retainer to the graveyard, and then you can revive Retainer or Familiar by pitching the Grace, and then you can continue your plays from there. Speaking of, we're playing triple copies of Vampire Retainer. You could send a vampire card from hand or field to the graveyard to revive this. Then you could pay 500 light points to search for a vampire spell or trap. We're playing triple copies of Vampire Familiar, very similar to Retainer. You could send a vampire card from your hand or field to the graveyard to revive this. Then you could pay 500 to add a vampire monster from deck to hand. Keep in mind, if Familiar or Retainer leave the field, they are banished instead of going to the graveyard. We're playing one copy of Vampire Grace. If this card's in your graveyard and you special summon a level 5 or higher vampire monster, you could pay 2,000 light points to revive it. Grace will primarily be used for your Beatrice plays, which we'll get into here in a little bit. We're playing one copy of the Shadow Vampire. Whenever this card is normal summoned, you could special summon a dark vampire monster from your deck. Mainly your Scarlet Scourge. Whenever this card is summoned, you're able to pay 1,000 light points to revive a vampire monster from your graveyard. Keep in mind, the monster revived cannot attack that turn. We're playing one copy of Vampire Voidvoid. Honestly, this is just in here to go into your rank 8. But it does have some neat effects. It can negate a card effect as long as a copy of that card is in the graveyard. And it can revive itself whenever a monster is brought back from your opponent's graveyard by attributing 2 monsters you control. We're playing triple copies of Unizombie. This is going to be your secondary starter. If you don't open with Ghost, Unizombie will suffice. You're mainly going to be using it to send your Familiar or your Retainer to the graveyard. That way you can get your plays going. And not only that, this opens up some synchro plays as well. We're playing one copy of Necroworld Banshee. This just gives you access to Zombie World. We'll play one copy of Glow Up Bloom. This gives you access to your vampire monsters, but mainly we're going to be using it to get access to our Doom King, which provides a negate and removal effect while Zombie World is on the field. We are playing triple copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. Triple copies of Effect Veiler. And triple copies of Nibiru. I say this in most of my videos recently, that if you don't like the hand trap lineup or ratio, you could change it to your liking. I don't know what your local scene is like, but these are the hand traps that work best for me. We're playing triple copies of Pot of Prosperity. This just adds consistency to the deck. And not only that, it allows us to gain quicker access to our Vampire Ghost. That way we can get our combos going. We're playing 2 copies of Vampire Domain. This allows us to get an additional normal summon for our vampire monsters. We're playing one copy of Vampire Desire. This is pretty much a Foolish Burial. Again, that way we can get our Retainer, Familiar, and Graveyard as quickly as possible. That way we can get our combos going. Speaking of, we're playing one Foolish Burial. We're playing 2 copies of Zombie World. This is going to help lock our opponent, which we'll get into here a little bit. And then we're playing Call by the Grave to counter hand traps. We're playing one copy of Vampire Domination. We're going to be searching this Retainer, but it's pretty much a spell and trap negate while we control a vampire monster. Last but not least, for the main deck, we're playing triple copies of Rivalry of the Warlords. Zombie World is going to change the type of our opponent's monsters on field and in the graveyard to zombie, so this could potentially lock our opponent out and allow us to gain advantage. Getting into the extra deck, we are playing one copy of the Vampire Zombie. This does have targeting protection, and not only that, you could send the top 4 cards of each player's deck to the graveyard, and if one of them happened to be a monster, you could special summon one of them to your field. We're playing one copy of Vampire Sheridan, which has a removal effect. And we're playing one copy of Crimson Knight Vampire Braum, which can steal an opponent's monster from their graveyard. Keep in mind, we can go into these by using one of our appropriate monsters that has the level to go into these, along with an opponent's monster we control, which will be treated as the level we need to go into these ranks. So let's say I have a level 6 monster, and I control my opponent's level 2 monster. That monster will be treated as 6, and then I could overlay them to go into Sheridan. We're playing one copy of Beatrice. This will allow us to enable our Doom King plays and Zombie World plays. We're playing one copy of Zeus, one copy of Baron de Fleur for the negate. I would recommend adding Psychic and Punisher, but I don't own that card, so if you do, feel free to add it in. We're playing one copy of Vampire Sucker. This allows you to attribute your opponent's monsters for your vampires. And not only that, if a card is special summoned from the graveyard, you're able to draw a card. So this just allows you to capitalize on more plays. We're playing one copy of Vampire Fascinator. This just enables us to steal our opponent's monsters. Again, that will allow us to Xyz summon for our other boss Xyz. We're playing one copy of IP Masquerena, which can allow us to interrupt our opponent. One Phoenix for spell and trap removal. One Unicorn for the spin. One copy of Blackluster Soldier, Soldier of Chaos. I don't go into it often with this deck, but it's a good card to have just in case. It's mainly good for the grind game because it does have protection if you use a level 7 or higher monster as material. We're playing one copy of Appaloosa for the negate. One copy of Underworld Goddess. We're mainly going to be using IP Masquerena to go into this. And then Underworld Goddess will be able to shut down our opponent's activated effects. And then we're playing one copy of Mech Knight Crusadia Avermax. Getting into the 2-card combo, you either want to open with Ghost or your Retainer. You're going to normal summon Ghost. You're going to send Retainer to add Grace. Then send Familiar to the graveyard. You're going to use Familiar's effect to revive itself by pitching Grace. On summon, you pay 500 to search for Shadow Vampire. You're going to revive Retainer by sending Ghost. Retainer's effect on summon, you pay 500 to add Domination. Next, you're going to Link Summon. These are going to be banished when they leave the field for Vampire Sucker. You're going to banish Ghost to gain an additional normal summon. So you're going to tribute Sucker for Shadow Vampire. Shadow Vampire will bring out Scarlet. You're going to activate Scarlet's effect. So it's going to be Chainlink 1 Scarlet to Grace. Because you summon Scarlet, you're going to be able to bring back Grace at the cost of 2,000 life points. And then Scarlet will resolve, bringing back Sucker. Next, you're going to Xyz summon for Beatrice. You're going to detach for Beatrice's effect. You're going to send Necroworld Banshee to the graveyard. Now you could Link summon for a Link 3, or you could go into another Link 2 monster. It doesn't really matter. I like to have more bodies on board, but it's ultimately up to you what you want to do. So we can just leave these here and banish Necroworld Banshee to activate Zombie World directly from deck. You're going to set Vampire Domination and end your turn. Whenever your opponent draws, you're going to detach for Beatrice to send your Doom King to graveyard. And then during their standby phase, since Zombie World's on the field, you can revive your Doom King. This concludes today's deck profile. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, be sure to give the video a like, leave a comment down below. I always enjoy interacting with you. And please consider subscribing for more awesome Yu-Gi-Oh content. Hit the notification bell to be notified of when I go live and upload. And until next time, I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you in the next video.